Time for a look through the morning's newspapers, and with us to review them is the editor of The Big Issue, Paul McNamee, and the broadcaster, Thomas Copeland. But before we hear from them, let's take a look through the front pages. And we'll start with the front page of the Daily Mirror, which quotes the head of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine, who said delays in care could be killing 500 patients a week. That warning from Dr. Boyle also makes the front page of the Daily Express. The Times also makes it their front page story, and they mention the staff shortages, surgery backlogs, flu and COVID all contributing to the crisis the service is facing. The Guardian predicts that NHS strikes could continue for months, with staff facing real terms pay cuts. The Eye reports that 73% of Conservative voters think the party has mismanaged the health service. While the Daily Mail calls it a triple New Year headache for Rishi Sunak, throwing in migrant crossing and rail strikes too. The Telegraph reports that the Prime Minister has shelved plans for an overhaul of the childcare system, and they've got the NHS story on the front page too. The Sun reports on the publication of Prince Harry's new book, while the Star's headline is Barking Mad, a story about councils spending millions of pounds on trees, some of which die because they haven't been planted properly. All right, let's bring our guests in, Thomas and Paul. Guys, thanks for being with us again. Let's go inside the papers now, and we're going to start with you, Thomas. You picked out this story, page 6 of The Guardian, about Extinction Rebellion. Talk to us about that.
This is in quite a few of the papers as well. Extinction Rebellion, a group made famous for, its really disruptive forms of protest. You'll remember people gluing themselves to the gates of Buckingham Palace. Lots of extensive disruption in Piccadilly Circus, Oxford Circus, bank headquarters and newspapers being, paint on windows being smashed. That's what made this group famous. They've issued a statement yesterday entitled We Quit, saying that it wants to move away from that highly disruptive form of protest. A brilliant quote, they want to prioritise attendance over arrest and relationships over roadblocks. They admit in the piece, in the statement, that it's a controversial move, especially with the people who supported and have supported Extinction Rebellion, precisely because it was engaged in that kind of highly disruptive protest, a lot of young people. I can't help but feeling there's probably a lot of politics underneath the surface here. Extinction Rebellion always prided itself on being a decentralised organisation, but that's not to say, and it's always the case, that there's great and very dynamic power struggles going on here. You also feel as if, is this an organisation that's been outflanked by the likes of Just Stop Oil, another similar protest group that's made famous over the last couple of months by throwing soup at works of art across the UK. It feels a little bit like what Extinction Rebellion is trying to do here is just move themselves into being a much more mainstream organisation. They talk about building relationships inside and outside power. That feels like it's an organisation that once it moves itself into the mainstream, the kind of action in which it was engaged was always a bit of a trade-off. You were trading in the headlines that you gained, the extra publicity, more people talking about these issues of climate change, and in exchange you annoyed a certain number of people. I wonder whether Extinction Rebellion now feels it's got to a tipping point where the balance is no longer in its favour. This article quotes a YouGov poll that says that the organisation is disliked by more people than it is liked. Is this a move towards trying to become a much more mainstream player, aware of the fact that new organisations like Just Stop Oil, there will always be a new organisation to outflank where you're standing, and they want a more permanent position.
Interestingly, that Just Stop Oil and Insulate Britain, which I believe are spin-offs of Extinction Rebellion, have not said they're going to stop their direct action, so that will continue. So it is a fascinating move, Thomas, and thanks for bringing us that. Paul, let's go to you, and you picked up this story also in The Guardian as well about bus fares. And on the face of it, a £2 sort of flat fee for bus fares sounds great, but there might be a wrinkle in that.
Yeah, very much. And I think bus provision and public transport provision is one of the quiet crises across Britain at the moment. This story relates to a 3-month rollout of 60 million money to cap bus fares at £2, as you say, across about 4,500, which is great. A lot of them in rural southwest and northeast where bus provision is not great. However, the warning comes from Campaign for Better Transport that says once this runs out, and it will run out around the same time as additional provision to help public transport post-COVID, that there is a risk of up to 20% of bus services going the way of all flesh and being no longer there for people. And I think this is a real problem, because bus services, particularly in places of deprivation and in rural areas where there's not always a lot of investment, are essential, not just for key workers who frequently need to use them, but for pensioners or people who don't necessarily have a private transport. And when that comes away, it stops the engines of commerce working in those areas, and also just being able to get a big issue, it gets the big reaction. And there is a possibility to do something about it. You look at Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester bringing some services back into public ownership, or in Scotland, where if you're under 21 and under, you get free bus use. Things can be done if there's a will, but again, this just feels like a lack of proper joined-up thinking from Westminster. It's good that they've got this, but they haven't thought a little further down the road, literally.
Literally. All right, Thomas, let's turn to you now, and you've got this story here in the Express about Amazon, and I'll let you give us all the detail of this. I don't think viewers will be very surprised when they hear what you've got to say.
Well, that's right. It's a typically depressing and predictable story. So Amazon launched Amazon Aware earlier on in the year, a whole line of everyday products that they said would be the eco-friendly choice. You can just about see the logo there on your screen. They've replaced the A in Aware with a leaf, which is a classic move, but it's plagued by many of the same issues that we see in the way that online shopping works much more broadly. A Telegraph investigation found that items were still wrapped in single-use plastic. They were being imported from all over the world. Now, Amazon says that it does carbon offsetting for all of these products. That typically means donating or finding financially supporting initiatives elsewhere to try to offset some of that carbon use, planting trees, cleaning up the oceans, etc. The big headline, I suppose, in here in most of these papers is the Green Party peer Jenny Jones calling this greenwashing on a grotesque scale and saying that this carbon offsetting doesn't work. Now, to be fair to Amazon, it's a fairly limited investigation, and this is a new line of products, but here's a New Year's resolution maybe for consumers that want to engage in a more eco-friendly choice. You've got to look at the fine print. If you want to make these decisions, then just make sure that the people that you're going to try to get these eco-friendly choices are actually, seeing this through all the way down the supply chain. That's a major problem with Amazon. There's potential here, and clearly they understand the fact, and are at least to a certain extent capitalizing monetarily on the fact that people want to go for these more eco-friendly choices. But I think consumers are smart as well, and they cotton on pretty quickly when they find that these initiatives actually don't work, and they realize the places that they want to go to or don't want to go to for an eco-friendly choice. So eventually I think Amazon will need to iron out all of these kinks. Consumers won't be, they won't have the wool pulled over their eyes for that much longer. There's your New Year's resolution. Look at the fine print.
Absolutely right. Always worth looking at the fine print if you can face it. And sticking with the sort of theme, Paul, your story here in the Daily Telegraph has got a bloke who is a genuine eco champion. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this is a positive story for the new year.
Excellent.
There's been a lot of negative stories, but this is a good story. And I liked it also because it's from a part of the world that I know well in North Antrim. It's a fellow called Stuart Hood who has planted 20,000 trees, 20,000 of them, on a 22-acre site just outside Antrim. He's put in some native beech oak, and he's then going to put in some pine. I guess he doesn't have to do it. He's got a bit of a grant to do it, but it's a good thing that there are people who are trying to plant trees when we need as many trees as we can, and also bring in a little biodiversity, because it also says that his son has put some beehives in the area, and they're looking to keep some wetland within the area as well. So there are these pockets of positivity of people doing the right thing and trying to make the world better for all of us. Let's hope that it's not just in North Antrim, outside of Antrim town, but across the rest of Britain. But for now, I am celebrating somebody in Northern Ireland doing something well.
Yeah, and well worth celebrating. And I'm sure it is happening in other areas, but it's really good to see that someone is planting trees and bringing back these kind of areas. Good for the wildlife and good for us too. Right, Thomas, Paul, thanks both very much. Now, coming up on the next hour of Sky News at Breakfast, the latest on the mounting pressure being faced by the NHS as several trusts NHS report experiencing critical incidents. Some 500 patients are reportedly dying each week because of a lack in care and delays in the care that they are facing. We've heard from the Chief Executive of the NHS Confederation saying that the service is under unbearable pressure.